Hey everybody, welcome to the November Ascension update. So, Sun is now in Scorpio. Scorpio is intense. If we break that word up, intense, in the present tense. So, what it does is it is a catalyst for us to feel everything in the present moment. And that is uncomfortable. It's like for the nervous system, feeling like a cat on a hot tin roof. It's like you want to rip your skin off, shed the old identity. It's when we want to die. It's the transition phase when we know we can't go back. Yeah, that we were, what we were doing really was the root of our suffering. And yet the fear of letting go and surrendering and moving into the unknown is equally, formidable, terrifying. So we're caught in that moment of trying to control the outcome and knowing we need to surrender. That is this month. It is called in the hero's journey, the supreme ordeal. So if you think about a supreme pizza, it's got everything on it. So you might feel like you've got everything on your plate right now, that you're being tested in every area of your life simultaneously. And that, my friends, is the definition of crisis. So this is the crisis moment on the 12-month solar wheel that we're all journeying as the solar hero. And this was the ancient Grail practice of the 12 suns, understanding that the cycles are what initiate us. The mystics are the ones who help us make sense of those cycles. So I'm very excited to announce that I've got an online event happening specifically to assist the brothers with this initiation, because men are ruled by the sun, whereas women are ruled by the moon. So, the supreme ordeal is when men in particular are really at risk of suicide. And so this event is to support the collective masculine, especially those in the Northern Hemisphere who are between, well, exact Samhain, which has been renamed Halloween after All Hallows Eve, is only happening for those in the Northern Hemisphere. So I'm here in Bali and they've, got haunted houses and things and everything for parties on the 31st of October. But the true date is November the 8th. This is the exact halfway point between the equinox and the solstice. So we're yet to venture into that 3-day vortex of transformation. So it's a very powerful portal to do ceremony, meditate, do trance invoking practices such as breath work, self-pleasure, chanting, ecstatic dance, but just be sure to ground first, send your roots down, because when we're in these portals, there's more chance of, the energy going from the ground floor to the honeymoon suite in the elevator within, and people wigging out and having a psychotic episode. So do stay grounded. How? Well, walk around barefoot, eat protein, get enough sleep, avoid stimulants like coffee and cacao. So, I will put the link to this event. It's going to be on the dark moon. So when the sun and the moon are in Scorpio, so we get a double hit of intensity, and it'll be happening at 7 p.m. UK time. I'll be back in the UK for that. So look in the description below, or if you're a subscriber, I'll put the email in put the link in the email. And if you're wondering how to subscribe, you can go to themoonwoman.com and a pop-up will come up. So this is the time when we are put through a baptism of fire, okay, possibly because Scorpio is ruled by Mars, or rather Pluto, and then Mars is the sub-ruler, the ancient ruler of this sign. So that's a lot of fire. Okay, it's very explosive, very volcanic. Think of Pele, the volcanic goddess of the Polynesian people. So, it's very much it's a potent sign. It is the sign of death and rebirth. So if we're not supported, guided to have a shamanic death and rebirth, which is a death of the ego, a death of our old way of doing things, letting go of old beliefs and perspectives, um, having a showdown with our saboteur, our shadow side. What is that? Our unconscious thoughts, words, and deeds. So chances are there's going to be catalysts that converge this month that confront you with what needs to change, what needs to die metaphorically. Yeah, what shift needs to occur in you. So if you have people pointing out your shadow, saying, oh, you hurt my feelings when you did this, or, this is when we most need to listen and be humble. This is the path of the tantric, yeah, or tantrika, when we bow to the shadow as the teacher. Okay, so instead of feeling shame and being embarrassed that someone's seen our, less than conscious side, we're grateful. We receive it as a gift, yeah, rather than scapegoating that person, the messenger, and shooting the messenger, yeah, making it about them. So, if we humble the ego to integrate the shadow, to become that Zen whole being, okay, and this is the path to queendom and kingdom within. Then next month, when the sun is moving through Sagittarius, the sign of the philosopher, the one who quests for truth, for true meaning, then we will receive the reward, the gift, and that may be secret knowledge or a new special awareness. And so I'm very excited to announce today that the registrations are open for the inaugural Grail Retreat happening in Norfolk, UK, December 17 to 22. And for those of you thinking, well, gee, that's close to Christmas. Yes, there's a reason for that. Christmas, my friends, is an appropriation of Yule. And the Holy Grail was when men would gather in the green chapel in the forest, and a Magdalene would initiate them through the ancient rite of passage that was the Holy Grail, which includes the act of matrimony, wedding yourself to the earth to receive your sacred purpose. It's also an opportunity to review the year that was, your harvest on all levels of your being, and make new intentions for the coming year. It's an opportunity to marry the bride within, to become whole and integrated, to make that shift from, the split persona or the warrior who's at war with himself and therefore unconsciously projecting potential threats onto others, which makes it hard to make commitments, hard to really embrace one's opposite for fear of losing one's identity and personal power. So there's a lot in it. I'll put the link in the description. So yeah, please go and have a look at that. For those who sign up to the online event, I'll offer you an exclusive deal on that retreat. So, are you willing to humble your ego? Yeah, that's, the mark of a true hero is someone who will relinquish the attitude of, oh, I know everything. Yeah, if we think about the Grail, it's receptive, it's an open cup, someone whose mind is open to receive new ideas, new perspectives, i.e., they've got access to the feminine half of their nature. Scorpio is a very feminine sign. It's very deep. It doesn't have surface conversations. If you ever meet a Scorpio, they're going to probe right in, and within an hour, they will know your deepest, darkest secrets. And that's not because they want to control, manipulate, or leverage them, but rather that that's their way of being. They're only interested in knowing the deepest truth about a person or a situation. So they're going to be very penetrative psychologically and emotionally. So we can all harness that this month to go deep, do journaling, have a session, a coaching session. And on that, my third launch, I'm now available for one-to-one coaching for those that want midwifery for their shamanic death and rebirth. So I'll provide a link to that in the description as well. Um, this is a time, if we think about Scorpio, it's the eighth sign on the zodiac wheel. Okay. So, yes, it's the 11th month of November to awaken the 11 master beings, someone who has raised those twin serpents, those meridians of sacred feminine and masculine energy, known as Ida and Pingala, or Shiva and Shakti. But around the zodiac wheel, it's the eighth month. And if we think about number 8 in numerology, that's abundance and power. So the more that we come into our true sovereign power, the more we can manifest by being in the flow. Why? Well, 8 is the infinity sign. This is how energy moves. And energy is in constant flux, constant flow. So it's about getting in our groove. Yeah. And to do that, we've got to be authentic. And that's the real superpower of Scorpio. It strips everything back so we feel like bone woman. Yeah. Someone who's been taken down, okay, maybe lost everything, gone to that 0 point. The other way we may be baptized is through grief. So even though Scorpio can be fiery because of that plutonium energy and Mars is the sub-ruler, and when Scorpio is out of balance, it will express the shadow of its opposite sign, Taurus, the rage of the bull. But it is a water sign. So the way it takes us down is grief. And I know this week I've had 2 dreams of the house flooding, which is very symbolic. I'm also currently sitting looking out at the ocean right on a cliff, and behind me is the live volcano, Mount Agung. You couldn't get a more scorpionic environment, and tomorrow is my 55th birthday. So, you know, I had to surrender all of my well-laid plans. I'd organized a family holiday and that all went tits up. Then I booked accommodation somewhere, and when I arrived, there was earth moving equipment and construction, angle grinders that were going to be going 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. for every day of my stay, a total of 56 hours. So I didn't even unpack my bags. I was like, nah, I can't do this. Lost my money, but it was like I just couldn't do that to myself. And so it reminds me, I end up here, the most perfect location near my friends. One is having her birthday today. So it's like, it reminds me of in the African birthing tradition, the women create a birth bead. And the first time they create this bead, they put so much effort into it. They want it to look beautiful and perfect. And then they have to smash it. And then they have to do it again. And then they have to smash it again. And they get to keep it on the third time. And this is akin to the tempering of the ego that happens during a Scorpio transit, such as this solar month in Scorpio. So, you're going to feel like a squash bug potentially. Yeah. Maybe on the windshield going backwards and forwards, but it's like pummeling after pummeling after pummeling. And as someone with 5 planets in Scorpio, I've had friends say to me this week, my God, you seem to have the rug pulled out up from under you time and time again. And it's like, yeah, that's what I put my hand up for in journeying with this energy this lifetime. It's constantly dying to the plans that you had um, in order to surrender. And surrender is how we access ultimate power. So if we think about the figure eight, it's the infinity sign. And, Scorpio is a quest for power. So people who working with this sign, whether or not it's your sun sign, you might have Scorpio rising, Scorpio moon, Scorpio north node. You might have a lot of planets in the eighth house ruled by Scorpio. So you don't necessarily have to have sun in Scorpio to have, you know, a very intense scorpionic ride this lifetime. And if you don't have a chart, astro.com will get you a free chart. No association or commission of mine. But I forgot what I was saying. Dang. Um, so we have to, it's a quest for power. So often those that are at the level of the scorpion, the unconscious Scorpio, which can be anyone when the sun is moving through Scorpio, will be trying to find power over other people. Yeah, through dominating, through control, because they aren't feeling very powerful inside. So they're afraid of everything. So they're trying to control everything and everybody in order to feel safe, okay, i.e., powerful. This is the first stage. The second stage is when we awaken that inner power, which is the serpent of knowledge, but it's actually the serpent of a awakening of Kundalini. And this is when we become self-aware. So like the saying, know thyself, you know, at the Oracle of Delphi, they had that etched in the stone. The more we become aware of our light and our shadow, the more we can harness our power and be more productive, more creative with that power. So, in this phase, we find power through personal growth, through healing, through doing immersive, intensive, transformational events, which for those of us with a lot of Scorpio, that's our jam. We love watching people transform in front of us and, midwifing people through those intensives, which is why I love doing retreats, in particular, people that show up, yeah, and step up, and really, put everything on the line to jump into that arena, into that crucible of fire to go through an intense transformation. And that means really committing to themselves, putting aside the time, the money, the energy, confronting the fears that come up around that, and saying, you know what, I'm worth it. This is what needs to happen. So, I've laid down the gauntlet, guys. I'm saying come and transform with me this December. And the details are below if you want to come to the Grail Retreat. It would be my absolute honor to initiate you. So, ultimate power is what we experience in the third stage of Scorpio, and this is the eagle. When we find our wings because we've awakened those meridians, which then activates when they come together in the third eye and bow, and we acknowledge that the feminine and the masculine are both equally gifted and equally flawed, and we've got those aspects active and receptive within us, and we need to harness them to create the inner marriage, which is why I'm wearing both, the solar, the lunar and the solar. Then the wings outstretch, we become soul dominant, like that symbol, the caduceus with the serpents on the pillar with the wings outstretched, that's been appropriated by big pharmaceutical companies. When the wings are outstretched, then we've got access to the big picture. So we can see from a bird's eye view, a mythic or an archetypal point of view, make sense of the chaos. Yeah. So this is someone who's learned to journey the three worlds within the world tree known as Yggdrasil to the the Norse, the Vikings. So this is what we're journeying this month. We're journeying the world tree. And the only way to go up is to go down first. In other words, through surrendering, we then get taken up in the Taurus fields through being willing to be humble, to go through that 0 point. Do we collapse the ego and everything reassembles like chaos theory in a way that's inexplicable, but it's perfect? Yeah, and it's in a way that we could never have planned. And that's when we embody the phoenix, someone who has combusted in the intensity of the fire within, the Kundalini, that sacred fire, to be born. What is it? To live another day. I'm quoting James Bond. Um, Die Another Day. Anyway, forgive me, Daniel Craig. Um, but this is when we become that magical bird of many colors, which is a spirit bird. Think Quetzalcoatl from the Mayan tradition, the plumed or winged serpent. You know, the peacock is the closest bird we have in the earthly 3D realm that resembles the phoenix. It is the bird of spiritual majesty. Yeah. So this is how we become a god or a goddess. We think about Hanuman, the monkey god. You know, in the ancient texts, when they referred to animals, they weren't referring to the hooven, the finned, and the feathered. They were referring to the uninitiated men and women. Yeah, that those who are just operating in 3D, the lowest three centers of awareness, or the lower three chakras or energy centers, were akin to animals. It was just every man for himself, law of the jungle, you know, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Just that's when people, you know, give Scorpio a bad rap. They're thinking about someone who's behaving in that level of shadow or unconsciousness. But Scorpio is the sign of initiation. Those who will seek initiation, seek the grail, seek truth, the truth about themselves and the nature of reality, and therefore will receive the ultimate gift, which is to understand the mystery and to see oneself as a part of it and to know one's place in the mystery. And that's what gives us purpose and meaning. Ironically, without purpose and meaning, we are at risk of taking our own life in order to end suffering. So, if you know people, or perhaps you're listening to this and you've had suicidal ideations, this is part of being human. Okay, we are taught in our modern world that this is some sort of mental dysfunction. We If we are to live the full human experience, the full spectrum, the color wheel of human emotion, then we will experience blackness. It's what we do with that blackness when we enter the void, the place of pure potential. And that is, you know, the birth canal. So, if we understand that life is cyclic rather than linear, we embrace death, knowing that it's going to liberate us from our burdens, from our suffering. You know, the fact that people fear death and spend a whole life um, compensating for that fear, and in doing that, um, limit themselves from living fully, is the greatest shame, because death is the ultimate gift. When we finally drop that mortal coil, we're free, we're in bliss. And to spend our whole life being afraid of that is just, it's kind of like black comedy in a way. So, you know, like the tarot card of death, we see children greeting death with flowers and gifts. Children embrace change. They know, because they trust the benevolent universe is always happening for them. Whereas when we go into our small self, the scared, wounded child, We fear that everything's being done to us, that we're being punished, that life isn't fair. And the more we run that story, the more we look for evidence of that, and we go into victim and martyr. And the more dense our frequency becomes in that, the more obstacles and struggle we experience. But the war is within. So that's what we face. We're facing the dragon in Scorpio, which is that Kundalini, that serpentine energy. So this is the month to stop trying to control the outcome, surrender all of your plans. Yeah, thy will, not my will. You can do something called casting the burden. This is in all philosophical traditions, where you simply see whatever it is that's causing you stress and worry, what issue you can't appear to solve, and you see yourself tying it up in a medicine bundle in your inner vision and handing it over to a higher power. Whether that's an avatar who you feel close to in your heart, like Yeshua or Kuan Yin or Ganesha, it doesn't matter who it is, but a bodhisattva, a benevolent being who is self-realized in their omnipotence, who is in service to all souls in their self-actualization process of coming home. So it's only in hindsight we see that we were supported. Yeah. And this is when we're on the other side of that ego death. Yeah. When we can laugh at the folly and the foibles of our ego, our small, scared self. So the key is we need to be reverent towards our sensitivity. Scorpio is one of the most sensitive of all the signs. The gift in that is psychic awareness, the clairs, clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, and so on. This is clear sensing. You might know it as your spidey sense, because Scorpio, if we were to come up with another totem for Scorpio, it's the spider. She has 8 legs, like the 8th sign. She looks like a figure 8, but she weaves the web of creation like great grandmother spider. And she is the symbol of feminine power. So people that fear spiders are often terrified of change, of chaos, and of women who have Tapawa, sacred power, those who challenge, those who call out your shadow, those who will initiate you. So use your spidey sense, honor your sensitivity. So just like with me arriving somewhere and going, oh my God, I couldn't handle listening to angle grinders 8 hours a day on my holiday. I have to remove myself, knowing that I, you know, will be taken care of by the benevolent universe. So we're coming up to the full moon tomorrow, November 5th, Guy Fawkes Day, the day of the rebel. And it's in Taurus. So this is the Sawain or Beltane full moon. I'll speak to that in a moment. But first, the full moon is going to be exact at 19 minutes past 9 p.m. here in Bali, in Indonesia. I'll put a link in the description so you can see that in your time zone. So this is a very powerful window. The full moon is the climactic point of the month. It brings everything to a head. So you might find the intensity, the drama is really overwhelming, but work with it, embrace it, just like a woman in labor needs to summon and welcome each contraction into fear, into pain, in order to move through the experience. The same is true of a psychological and an emotional rebirth. So welcome those intense emotions. Journey deeply, become the darkness. That might mean not showering. That might mean letting yourself feel, you know, completely feral and inappropriate. You know, getting down to the primal part to find your primal power. Connect with the elements. I'm going to be sitting on the beach around a bonfire with women tonight. You know, the elements summon our power. These are the creative elements that comprise our body and the earth: air, fire, water, earth. Yeah, commune with these elements to reconnect with your creative power to create a new self, a new set of circumstances. Yes, this is the sign of magic and mystery. Scorpio opposite Sun opposite the full moon in Taurus is my personal favorite night of the year, ideal for sex magic. So, anointing the chakras, invoking the god and goddess within, meditating, and then making love at the seven gates. If you want to know more about that, check out my book, Sacred Union and Partnerships, and the preparatory book, Creating Sacred Union Within, all available via my website, themoonwoman.com. So, this full moon in Taurus is also going to bring up maybe concern or a focus on the state of our physical resources, how much money we have, and what we're doing with that in terms of investments, particularly when we're living in a time when everything is becoming more and more unstable. So we've got, the threat of digital IDs being imposed upon the people, which is the final piece in the architecture that would roll out Agenda 30, which is a total surveillance state globally where everything you do is tracked and monitored. And if you don't comply, you're, you know, deleted off the system so you can't access money from your bank accounts and things like that. So we're seeing a groundswell of people coming together and saying no, signing petitions, summoning our power in a very trans-Pluto sense. Trans-Pluto hasn't yet been discovered, but my astrology teacher, bless his soul, he's on the other side, Warwick Sayer, this is finding power through coming together. And this is a very sort of Aquarian feminine way of finding power, unlike Pluto, which was discovered, I think, in the late 40s, when we discovered we could blow things apart with atomic energy. Yeah, now we're finding our power by coming together, people power. So, you know, Taurus is also about pleasure, about embodiment. Yeah, experiencing the divine through our senses. So feeling good, allowing yourself to feel pleasure, knowing that you deserve it, that you are divine, that your body is divine. It's not something to feel ashamed of or to see only through the critical mind, viewing it in terms of what needs to be improved, but rather loving it as a friend, as an ally, as a temple that houses your soul. So this is a time to have a massage, have a flower bath, maybe get some coffee grinds and exfoliate your body to feel alive, to feel good in your body. Um, Now, this is the portal of birth and death, the Beltane or Samhain full moon. Beltane, which many pronounce as Beltane, but the Gaelic pronunciation is Beltane, is the rites of spring. So if you're in the southern hemisphere, yeah, in the bottom half of the world, it is spring. It's not Halloween. It's when we celebrate by putting posies of flowers anonymously on our neighbors' doorsteps and by having picnics, dining al fresco. Yeah, this is a time to get back into the garden and to celebrate the beauty of the earth as Gaia wears her new green cloak. So you might want to collect some wildflowers and have a lovely dress a table and invite your friends over to sit and eat under your favorite tree. For those brothers and sisters in the Northern Hemisphere, where I'll be from the 14th of November, it is the Samhain full moon, known later as Halloween, and this is the festival of death. So the autumnal festival where we dance with our shadow, we dress up as our alter ego, the part of us that maybe we're ashamed of, we feel inner judgment of, and we're afraid that others will judge and reject. We own this part by dressing up, by celebrating. Yes, this part is part of me. So it wasn't about, you know, going and scaring people. It's a celebration of death, knowing that if we're not in right relationship with death, we can't be in right relationship with life. Okay, we can't live fully unless we heal that fear of death. So, other transits that we have happening this month, November 7, we have Uranus, which is currently retrograde, so appearing backwards. This is the ruling planet of the new age of Aquarius that we're moving into. It is returning to the sign of Taurus, where it was for the last 7 years. And it will finish that April 25th, and then go back into Gemini on September the 6th. So this is, we might see Earth changes. I know I had a dream last week of a volcano erupting. It was not too far away either, and it was a full eruption. So interesting that I'm currently literally on the back of a volcano. Um, Great energy, of course, to feel awakened and alive. But yeah, you might find sudden shifts in your finances and resources when it moves back into Taurus. Also, Uranus is the sign of Kundalini. So this is a portal for people awakening their Kundalini when it finishes that transit. We have Mercury in retrograde from November 9 through to the 29th, so appearing as if it's moving backwards. A lot of people fear Mercury retrograde periods. They go for 3 weeks, 4 times a year. This is when, we can have miscommunications and tech glitches, but it's a great window for communication between the higher mind and the lower mind. So a great time for journaling, and yeah, doing the inner work. So it will be retrograde in Sagittarius. So this is a time of higher learning. And then it will continue going backwards. On the 18th, it will move into the sign of Scorpio up until the 29th when it finishes its retrograde period. So, while in Sag, this is a really good time to review your beliefs, what you think is true. And this will also ignite potentially a sense of adventure, of becoming aware of other cultures, other landscapes that are calling to your soul for soul retrieval, to call back fragments and awarenesses from other incarnations. This is also a time for higher education, which may be tertiary institutions, but considering a lot of that is indoctrination, you might want to seek out the mystery schools for higher learning. Again, that's a shameless plug for the Grail Retreat. Do come. And when it moves into Scorpio, this is when we have the opportunity to become more self-aware of our shadow, the way that we are our own worst enemy, sabotaging our own happiness. So on the 11th of November, the 1111 portal, why is that significant? Well, it's oneness. It's the consciousness of oneness. The master being who has awakened a balance of feminine, masculine, which is the definition of a god or a goddess, somebody who embodies that balance in a male or a female form. So that is the date that Jupiter, the biggest planet, Jove, as the Romans called it, in our solar system, also goes retrograde in the sign of Cancer, which is the inner mother. Okay, so this is a wonderful time for being accountable to where we're not being nurturing of ourselves. Yeah, where we're not being patient, kind, self-accepting, so that we can then have an incredible expansion after March the 10th, 2026, if we tend to the inner child's wounds lovingly. Now, finally, I want to speak to 3I Atlas. This is the interstellar object that entered our solar system a few months ago, and there's been a lot of controversy, a lot of speculation about it. There's currently a video floating around on social media saying that the Chinese government have said it's hostile. That is a hoax. That is just clickbait. Basically, what sparked that was a physics professor from Harvard back in July postulated that it could be hostile, but there is no hard evidence whatsoever. Those that are mediums who have been channeling information from this celestial body have said the powers that be would try and scare us into thinking it's hostile. But for myself, when I look at the state of planet Earth, I welcome interstellar neighbors intervening. In fact, I have more trust in them than I do those that are currently holding the reins of power at the apex of power here on three-dimensional Earth. So let's not project our fears and anticipate an enemy. Let's instead trust the benevolent universe, knowing that everything's happening for us, not to us, and know that this is an ally that's here to support our ascension, our evolution at this time. So send your prayers of welcome. And yeah, if you're interested in knowing more about the Supreme Ordeal event that's happening, that I'm hosting online November the 18th for the Collective Brotherhood, click the link below. And if you're interested to know more about the Grail Retreat happening December 17 to 22 in Norfolk in the UK, where I will be taking men through the journey of the Holy Grail, click the link below. And if you're interested in my one-to-one coaching sessions and soul readings, again, there's a link. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and you found it helpful, you have my blessing to share it with your communities, with your families and friends. Thanks so much. Bye for now.